She fell, bleeding, but refused to beg, until he pointed his gun. The battlefield was quiet now. Smoke still rose from burning ships and broken machines. Dead bodies, both human and alien, lay across the red dirt of planet Eros 9. The war had ended, but the pain still hung in the air like poison. Mason Drake, a battle-hardened human soldier, walked through the ruins. His armor was scratched, his arm was bleeding, but his eyes were sharp. He was known as the Ghost, a man who never lost a fight and never showed mercy. He was searching for any survivors, not to kill them, at least not always. Sometimes he just needed answers. Then he saw her. Crawling between the metal wreckage, an alien warrior was dragging her body forward. Her silver-blue skin was covered in dust and blood. One leg was clearly broken. Her armor was cracked. But still, she moved. Mason raised his plasma rifle and aimed. One shot, and it would be over. She stopped. She looked up. Her eyes glowed violet with rage and pain. She recognized him. "You," she growled. Her voice was rough but strong. The human ghost. Mason stepped closer, his finger near the trigger. "You lost," he said calmly. "I never begged," she hissed, "and I never will." He stared at her. She was proud. Even now, even bleeding, broken, dying, she wouldn't ask for help, wouldn't beg for mercy. But then, something changed. Her body gave out. She collapsed onto the ground, face pressed against the cold dirt. Her hands shook. Her lips moved slowly, as if fighting the words. He stepped closer. "Say something," he said coldly. "You're still alive." "Why?" She looked up. For a moment, her pride cracked. Her violet eyes shimmered, not just with pain, but with fear. Real fear. Then, she said it. "Don't kill me, human. I'll warm your bed." Mason froze. He didn't lower his gun. He didn't speak. He just stared. What did she just say? The alien girl, this proud warrior, was now on her knees, her head low, offering herself not as a soldier, but as something else, a survivor, a woman, someone with nothing left. The silence was heavy. "What did you say?" he asked, voice cold. She didn't look up. "I said what I had to say. Kill me if you want. I've already lost. But if I live, I will belong to you. I will be your warmth, your peace, your bed." It wasn't seduction, it wasn't a trick, it was surrender. Mason's hands tightened around the gun. He had seen aliens fake surrender before. He had seen them cry, beg, even offer lies to escape. But this felt different. She wasn't acting. She was empty. Still, he couldn't trust her. Not yet. "What's your name?" he asked. "I have no name," she replied. "They gave me a number, SE-17. I was born for war. I have no family, no home." Mason lowered the gun, just slightly. Not enough to make a mistake, but enough to stop shaking. "You should have died with your army," he said. "I know," she whispered, "but I didn't." Her head hung lower. "I didn't ask to live. I didn't ask to be spared. But I am. So I'm yours now." The human soldier looked at her. This woman, no, this weapon, had never been allowed to feel, never been allowed to choose. Now her only choice was surrender or death, and somehow that made her more human than he wanted to admit. He sighed. "You're injured." "Yes." "Can you walk?" "Not far." He paused. Then finally he holstered his weapon. "Get up." She looked up surprised. "You're not going to kill me?" "Not today." She tried to stand, but her leg gave out. She cried in pain, falling again. Mason walked over and picked her up. She gasped. No one had touched her like that before, without violence. "Why?" she asked. He looked at the burning sky. "Because I've killed enough for one day." As he carried her toward the temporary human camp, soldiers stared. Some whispered, Others shouted warnings. "Drake, what are you doing? That's the enemy." But he didn't answer. The alien girl, still bleeding in his arms, whispered one last thing. "If you let me live, I'll never fight you. Never lie to you, just don't let them take me." He looked down at her tired eyes. For the first time, she didn't look like a soldier. She looked like someone who just wanted to survive. And somehow, in that moment, so did he. She was trained to hate humans, but why did she feel safe with him? The rain started just as they entered the abandoned outpost. It wasn't Earth's rain. On Eros 9, the water fell thick like oil and smelled like copper. It stained everything it touched. Mason pushed the metal door open with his shoulder, carrying the injured alien girl in his arms. Inside, the room was dark, quiet, and half-broken. But it was safe for now. He laid her down gently on a metal cot. She winced, trying not to show pain. Even now, she was fighting her weakness. Mason tossed his soaked jacket aside, his face unreadable. "This place used to be a comms room," he said. "Might still have power. Don't touch anything." Tharia, if she could even be called that yet, didn't answer. Her eyes watched him carefully, not with fear, but confusion. He turned, noticed her stare. "What?" "You carried me," she whispered. "You didn't chain me. You didn't bind my hands. Should I have? That's what humans do." He looked at her for a moment, then sighed. "I'm not like the others." She blinked. Her body was still in pain, but something else hurt deeper. Something inside. A memory. She looked away, voice quiet. "I was raised in the barracks, taken from the breeding vats as a child. We were taught one thing: kill humans." Mason sat across from her, wiping his rifle. "And yet here you are." "I was a weapon," she said. "They removed our fear, our pity, even our names, the ones who cried. They didn't survive training." She touched her broken leg lightly. Blood had soaked through the temporary wrap he'd put on earlier. "We were told humans have no soul. That you burn our planets, steal our water, kill our younglings." Mason raised an eyebrow. "Your people tried to wipe out Mars Colony 12. I lost people there. And I was told Mars 12 attacked first." Silence fell again. Two soldiers. Two enemies. Both told different stories. Both believing they were the victims. The outpost lights flickered as Mason found a weak power source. A warm yellow glow filled the room. Tharia stared at it as if it were magic. "You've never seen lights like these before?" Mason asked. "We don't waste power on comfort." He opened a ration pack, slid it toward her. "Eat," he said. She hesitated. Then slowly, carefully, took it. Her hands were shaking. She sniffed it like a wild animal, then looked at him. "You're not afraid I'll kill you in your sleep?" "You're too injured," he replied. "And if you weren't, you would have done it already." Tharia said nothing, but she remembered last night. She had woken up when he turned in his sleep. His throat had been exposed. Her hand had found a sharp piece of metal on the ground. She had crept toward him, but then she saw his chest. It was bare, scarred, old burn wounds, claw marks, shrapnel scars, and a necklace. A small broken chain, with a photo inside. She had opened it. A woman, human, smiling, holding a baby. She had put the chain back before he woke. That night, she had thrown the metal piece away. And now she was here, eating food given by the man she was trained to kill. "You saved alien children once," she said softly, chewing slowly. Mason looked up. She met his eyes. "In the refugee camp on Argon 7, 2 solar cycles ago." His jaw tightened. "How do you know that?" "I saw the vid logs. They made us watch it. They said you were weak, that you hesitated, but I never forgot your face." He stood, suddenly cold. "Those kids were going to be executed. They were just babies. Your own soldiers punished you for it." "Yes," he said flatly. "But I'd do it again." She looked down. Her voice cracked for the first time. I wanted to believe. You were weak too. I wanted to laugh at you, but now I just don't know what to believe. The wind howled outside. The rain turned to ice. Inside, warmth grew. Slowly. Mason laid out another blanket beside the cot. No beds here. Just cold, metal, and broken memories. He sat down, leaned against the wall, and closed his eyes. Try to sleep, he said. You'll need your strength. Tharia turned toward him, her voice barely a whisper. Your body is warm, she said, like home. He didn't answer, but he didn't move either. She shifted closer, not to attack, not to escape, but because, for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a weapon. She felt like something else, something new. You could have sold me. Why didn't you? The next morning, the air smelled of rust and old blood. Eros 9 had no birds, no sunrises, no peace. The sky was still a dull shade of purple. Broken ships littered the horizon. And inside the abandoned outpost, the silence between the two enemies was louder than any explosion. Tharia was the first to open her eyes. Her body hurt, every muscle, every bone, but her mind felt heavier than her wounds. Mason was already awake, sitting beside the door, polishing his rifle. Quiet. Still. As if sleep was something he never allowed himself. She watched him for a while, trying to understand him, this man who could have killed her but didn't. She broke the silence. You could have sold me. Mason didn't turn. I know. There's a bounty on alien prisoners. 10,000 credits for a live female. Warrior. I know that too. She sat up slowly, pain flashing across her face. Then why didn't you? Mason finally looked at her. His eyes were sharp, but there was no anger. Because I'm not a traitor. You're a soldier, she said. Not anymore. She frowned. What do you mean? He looked away. My war ended 2 years ago. I just didn't get the memo. That answer didn't make sense to her, but it made her curious. She shifted her body to sit straighter. You still wear your uniform, because I have nothing else. There was a long pause. Then she said it again, slowly. You could have sold me. Or worse. Many humans would have. Maybe, he said, but I'm not many humans. That made her stop. She looked down at her hands, once strong, now shaking. She was always taught that humans were savages, beasts in armor, killers with no soul. But Mason, he didn't match that story. She bit her lip. Back at the academy, they told us human men would tear us apart. Use us, break us. He didn't answer. But you gave me food, you carried me, you even let me sleep beside you. You were cold, he replied flatly, her eyes narrowed. Are you always like this? Like what? Kind. And cruel. At the same time. He looked at her, as if measuring her soul. Are you always like this? He asked back. Sharp and soft. At the same time. Her breath caught. She wasn't sure if it was an insult or the first compliment she'd ever been given. He stood and walked to the back wall. A faded map was pinned there, likely from the old Earth colony days. Mason studied it for a moment, then pointed. There's an evac ship 60 kilometers south, he said. I plan to reach it by tomorrow. And me? You can come, or stay. She was quiet. If I stay, I'll die. If you come, you'll live. But you'll be a prisoner. She expected that. What she didn't expect was the next thing he said. Unless I say you're my responsibility. She blinked. You're what? You surrendered to me. That makes you my charge. She looked at him, confused. Is that how human laws work? He smirked. No. But sometimes it's not about the law. It's about what people are willing to fight for, and right now it seemed like Mason was willing to fight for her. She didn't understand why, but she didn't hate it. Then the sound came. Buzz, click, static, a long, high-pitched tone from the radio system. One Mason hadn't touched, one that was supposed to be dead. He grabbed his rifle and spun around. The radio crackled again. Then a voice, distorted, broken, but clear enough. Unit 17, return immediately. Orders from command. Surrender the human and return or be terminated. Tharia's eyes widened. She recognized the voice. It was her handler. General Orvas, the one who raised her. The one who never gave her a name. Mason stepped toward the radio. Who is this? He asked. Silence. Then the voice returned. This is not a message for you, human. This is for the traitor. Tharia stood slowly. They tracked me, she whispered. They're watching. Mason's hand tightened on the gun. They want you back. Not to save me, she said. To execute me. He looked at her. For what? For kneeling to you, she said bitterly. For failing. For offering myself to the enemy. Mason swore under his breath, then walked to the window, checking outside. No movement. Not yet. Tharia sat down, suddenly feeling cold. They'll come for me, she whispered. And if I'm with you, they'll kill. You too. Mason didn't reply. Not for a while. Then, in a low voice, he said something she never expected to hear. Let them come. She looked up sharply. What? He turned, loading his gun. You saved my life last night. You could have killed me in my sleep. I almost did, she admitted. But you didn't. He walked over to her and placed a small knife in her hand. If they come, fight with me. She stared at the blade. Not as a weapon, but as a symbol. Trust, choice, freedom. And then, without realizing it, she said something she never thought she could say to a human. I'm scared. Mason crouched. Down, me too, he said, but fear makes us human. She looked at him, and for the first time in her life she believed that maybe, just maybe, being human wasn't the worst thing in the galaxy. I was a weapon. You made me feel like a woman. Outside, the storm rolled in, violent, red, and thick, like smoke. Eros 9 storms were nothing like Earth's. They burned the skin and cracked metal. As wind howled and lightning flashed orange in the clouds, inside the outpost, Mason and Tharia prepared for what was coming. They both knew it wasn't just the weather. It was the soldiers. Her soldiers. They would come for her, and Mason would stand in their way. For some reason she still didn't understand. She was leaning against the wall, wrapping her damaged leg with cloth. She didn't ask Mason for help, not because of pride, but because for the first time, someone had given her the space to do things her way. And yet, she watched him. Every movement, every glance. There was a softness behind his serious eyes, a sadness too. He had lost people, he had taken lives, but unlike her, he had a soul that survived the war. She finally spoke. Do you miss her? He paused. Who? The woman in your necklace. Mason froze. His hand stopped cleaning the rifle. He looked at her, slowly, carefully, then sat down. Her name was Lena, my wife. Tharia waited, silent. We were supposed to leave for Mars together, he said. Start over. But she died when the alien ships bombed the transport tunnels. She never made it to the shuttle. Tharia lowered her head. I didn't. Press the button, she said. But I was in that fleet. He looked at her long and hard and then quietly. I know. The silence between them this time wasn't heavy. It was honest. Tharia reached up and removed her armor's upper plating. Her shoulder was bruised, bleeding from the impact earlier. She flinched as she touched the skin. Mason stood. Let me help. She looked at him. You sure? You're not my enemy anymore. She hesitated, then nodded. He sat beside her and gently cleaned the wound. His touch wasn't rough, not rushed, just gentle. She stared at his hands. Hands that had killed. Hands that had saved. She whispered. You're the first person who's touched me without pain. Mason Mason didn't reply. She continued. Since birth, I've been trained, beaten, injected, trained again. My body was never mine. Not really. He paused. And now? She looked into his eyes. Now? You treat me like I'm something more than a tool. Mason tied the bandage gently. Because you are. The wind outside grew louder, almost screaming. But inside, her heart was louder. She reached for something beneath her neck, something she'd hidden since the first day she was created. A tiny piece of metal, pressed to her skin like a scar. She pulled it off. It was her identification tag. Cold. Numbered. No name. S-17, she said. That's what they called me. Mason took it from her hand, turned it slowly in his fingers. Then he reached into his coat and took out a small metal tool. With quiet hands, he etched something onto it. Carefully. Slowly. Then he gave it back. She looked at it. Tharya. Her eyes widened. Her throat tightened. What is this? She asked softly. Your name, he said. Your real one. The one you choose. Not the one they gave you. Her hands shook. No one had ever given her anything like this before. Not food. Not freedom. Not even a name. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it, and suddenly she laughed, a strange, unfamiliar sound. What? Mason asked. I think, she said, wiping her face. I've never laughed before. He smiled. You should do it more often. She stood up slowly, leaning on a broken beam. Her leg was still weak, but she didn't care. Then, as the storm raged behind her, she stepped outside the door. Mason grabbed his gun. What are you doing? Just watch, she said. She walked out into the storm. The red dust swirled around her. The wind howled. Her hair whipped in the air. She closed her eyes, raised her arms, and began to spin. It wasn't a soldier's motion. It was a dance. Clumsy, slow, awkward. But it was hers, a piece of herself she didn't know existed. Something innocent. Something human. Mason watched her like she was something from a different world, which she was, but not in the way he thought before. When she finally stepped back inside, soaked and shivering, she laughed again. That felt alive. You're insane, he said, smirking. Maybe, she replied. But for once I feel more than just blood and bone. She looked at him, really looked. And then, voice barely above a whisper, she said, I was a weapon. You made me feel like a woman. Before Mason could respond, boom, the ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The door alarm blinked red. Movement. Outside. Then the sound. Metal boots. Marching. Dozens. Mason's face went hard. He grabbed his rifle, pressed against the wall. Tharya's eyes narrowed. They're here, she said coldly. How many? She didn't even blink. Enough to kill us both. He glanced at her. Still feel like a woman? She smiled darkly, her voice calm. No. Now I feel like a woman with a reason to fight. And with that, Tharya picked up a plasma knife from the table. The blue glow reflected in her eyes. 2 warriors. 1 human, 1 alien, once enemies, now something more. Outside, the enemy closed in. Inside, something stronger was being born. Return her to us, human. She belongs to the army. They came at dawn. Not quietly. Alien dropships thundered through the dark sky, their engines screaming like angry ghosts. Red lights flashed across the ruined horizon, scanning the rocks and broken structures below. Dust rose with every gust of wind. The ground shook. Birds, even the alien ones, had long stopped singing. Inside the outpost, Mason locked the final door and loaded his weapon. Tharya stood beside him, a plasma knife in one hand, a stolen alien rifle in the other. Her long white hair was tied, back, her jaw set firm. She didn't look like the wounded girl from before, she looked like war. But her heart, it was something else now. They'll use a voice, she said, one we can't ignore. You mean psychological tactics? No, she replied, staring out the window. They'll use someone who knew me, someone who trained me. Just then, a loudspeaker crackled to life across the landscape. Unit S-17. Tharia, you were never given the right to choose. Surrender yourself to the state. Mason flinched. They knew her new name. The voice was sharp, metallic, yet filled with something darker. Ownership. You belong to the Zarek's command, it continued. Return immediately. The human beside you is irrelevant. He will not survive the next hour. Tharia stared at the speaker pole outside. Her face was cold, unreadable. Mason stepped forward. We can run. Through the back canyon. It'll slow them. No, she said. We stay. I face him. Who? General Orvis, she said. The one who made me. Mason gritted his teeth. He sounds like a real hero. He's not a hero. He's a machine in skin. Outside, one of the alien dropships began to land. The ground shook harder. Mason peeked through a broken panel. 20 soldiers at least, he muttered. Maybe more inside. Tharia turned to him. I need to ask you something, she said. He looked at her. Anything. She stepped closer, eyes searching his. If I go outside and say I surrender, they might leave you alive. Mason's heart froze. He hated that she even considered it. And if you do that, he said, voice hard, they'll strip your skin before they execute you. Maybe, she whispered. But you'll live. He grabbed her arm. Don't. You're not a gift to trade for peace. She hesitated. Then what am I? He didn't look away. You're my choice, he said. Thunder rolled outside. Her eyes shimmered, something between anger and hope. Then the loudspeaker roared again. This time it wasn't a threat. It was a voice. Familiar. Cold. Tharia. This is your command, General Orvis. Do not make me erase your memories again. Step forward now. Prove your loyalty, or we will destroy the structure you're hiding in. Tharia froze. Mason watched her closely. They can do that? Erase memories? They've done it before, she said softly. Twice. They call it mind purging. Burn parts of the brain. Wipe out emotions. They leave just enough to obey. He felt sick. He pointed to her rifle. You still want to go back to that? No, she said, but fear still lives inside me. That's what they planted. He stepped closer. You're not a weapon anymore. She looked down at her hands and then clenched them. Then let's fight. Mason nodded. You take high ground. Window post. I'll cover entrance. She moved fast. Her limp was still there, but her soul no longer limped. She was full force again. Just as she took position, a sonic charge hit the front gate. Boom. Metal. Twisted. Fire burst through the cracks. The outer wall cracked like ice. Mason steadied his rifle. 3 alien soldiers entered, dark armor, green eyes glowing. They moved like shadows. Fast, silent. Mason fired. 1 went down. 2 ducked. Then Tharia fired from above, 1 shot straight to the neck, the second fell, the third ran. She turned her eyes to Mason and for the first time smiled mid-fight. Not bad for an old man, she said. You missed, he replied, grinning. Another blast rocked the building. This time a voice came through loud and clear. Final warning, Orvis said. Return the unit, or we level the zone. Tharia narrowed her eyes. She jumped down, walked to the shattered door, and shouted into the open. You want me? The soldiers paused. Come and take me. Silence. Then, one figure stepped through the smoke. Tall, pale skin, eyes like polished steel. His armor shone with black and red. No emotion, no humanity. General Orvis. You disappoint me, he said to her. She raised her chin. I've learned disappointment, mostly from you. You were my best creation, he replied. But emotions, they ruin even the strongest mind. Mason appeared behind her, gun ready. Orvis blinked. You protect her? With everything I have, Mason said. Orvis tilted his head. Why? Mason smiled slightly. Because she's not a tool, she's someone. Orvis looked at Tharia again. If you walk away now, I'll erase what's left of your memories, your smile, your laughter, even his name. Tharia held up her gun. Then you'll have to kill me first. Bang! She fired. Orvis dodged, but the message was clear. She was done obeying. Battle broke out. Mason and Tharia side by side, fighting, bleeding, surviving. The outpost turned into smoke and light, their backs against the wall, ammo running low, hope burning thin, but she never surrendered. And he never left her side. Not this time. Not ever. I'll kill you before I let them touch you again. Blood dripped from Mason's temple as the wall behind him exploded. He dove, rolled, fired. 3 alien soldiers collapsed in seconds. His pulse thundered in his ears. The air stank of smoke, ozone, and burnt skin. Beside him, Tharia screamed in rage, slashing with her plasma blade, spinning through the storm of bullets like a flame set loose. But even fire can flicker. A blast hit her shoulder hard. She stumbled. Fell. Tharia! Mason shouted, rushing to her side. Her face twisted in pain, but her grip stayed firm on the blade. I'm not done, she growled. He lifted her up, covering her with his body as another wave of enemy fire crashed down. They ducked behind the broken console. Sparks sprayed around them. She breathed heavily, blood soaking her armor. They're not stopping, she said. Neither are we, Mason replied. They looked at each other, bruised, broken, alive, and something more. The wall behind them cracked. They were running out of shelter, of time, of luck. Then a voice echoed again, sharp, clear, final. Enough, said General Orvis from outside. You've proven nothing but weakness, Tharia. Surrender now, or the human dies first. She shook her head. He doesn't understand. I'm not scared of him anymore. Mason tightened his grip on the rifle. He wants me to distract you. He wants me to give up the only real thing I've ever had, she whispered. And what's that? He asked gently. She looked at him, eyes shimmering. You. He reached out, touched her cheek, softly, without words. But the moment broke. Another. Blast, the back wall exploded. They were exposed now. No more shelter. Orvis himself stepped through the smoke, flanked by his elite guard. Their guns glowed. Their boots stomped in perfect rhythm. Their armor bore the mark of death squads. He walked toward them slowly, like a man already victorious. You should have died in training, he said to Tharia. You were never meant for love, for softness. You were meant for orders. Tharia stood even though her leg shook. She raised her gun. Orvis stopped. You can't kill me, he said. I know, she replied, but I can slow you down. She fired. One shot, straight to the leg of the soldier beside him, another to the fuel tank behind the squad. Boom! Chaos. Flames. But it wasn't enough. A sniper fired from above. Crack. The shot raced toward Mason's chest. And then, everything slowed. Tharia jumped, pushed him aside. The bullet tore through her side. She collapsed. Mason's scream was raw and human. No! He caught her before she hit the ground. Blood soaked his hands. Her eyes fluttered. You idiot, he whispered. Why would you do that? She smiled weakly. I told you. I belong to you now. Her hand touched his face. He shook. Stay with me, Tharia, please. She coughed, gasping. Don't cry. Mason stood, rage burning like wildfire. He turned to the field, his eyes finding Orvis through the smoke. You shot her, he said coldly. She chose weakness, Orvis replied. Mason raised his rifle. No, he said. She chose something stronger than anything you'll ever know. He fired. Orvis dodged, but barely. The rest of the soldiers surrounded him. Mason moved like death. His training took over. He weaved through bullets, dropped enemies one by one. One soldier rushed him. Mason slammed his rifle into the helmet and shattered it. Another tried to stab him. He rolled, grabbed the plasma blade from the ground and sliced upward. Every second was blood and fire, but he never stopped. Because she was behind him bleeding. Because he had something to protect now. He saw Orvis trying to escape. "No, you don't," Mason growled. He tackled him. They rolled across the ground. Mason punched. Orvis kicked. Metal clashed. Bones cracked. "You turned her into a weapon," Mason said. But she chose to be human. Orvis reached for his sidearm. Mason pulled his blade and drove it into his chest. Orvis gasped, silent, stunned. Mason whispered, "You don't get to touch her again." And then, silence. The rest of the enemy forces pulled back, confused, leaderless. The dropships began to retreat. Victory, but at what cost? Mason limped back to Tharia. She was still breathing, barely. He dropped to his knees, holding her head. "Stay with me," he whispered. "We're almost done." She blinked, voice weak. You're crying." "Yeah." He laughed softly, tears falling. "You said not to?" She smiled. "You never listen?" He looked up. In the distance he saw it. A human rescue beacon had activated when Orvis fell. A ship would come. Maybe, if they weren't too late. He held her hand tighter. "Don't. Go to sleep," he said. "Stay awake." "Tell me something," she whispered. "What?" "Something human. Something soft." He leaned close and whispered into her ear, "When we get home, I'll build you a bed so warm, you'll never need to beg again." Her breath trembled. Then as the sky cracked with thunder and lights flashed in the clouds, she smiled and closed her eyes. She woke up in his bed. Wearing Earth's Medal of Honor, it was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that made you wonder if you were still alive, or somewhere else. Tharia opened her eyes. The ceiling was white, clean, soft lights above. A beeping sound near her head. The air didn't burn her lungs. There was no blood in her mouth, no fire in the sky. She blinked again. Her body ached, every bone, every muscle, but she could breathe. A machine nearby beeped gently. Tubes ran into her arm. A warm blanket covered her chest. She was not in the outpost, not in Eros 9. She was in a hospital, and then a familiar voice. "You're awake." She turned her head slowly. Mason sat beside her, one hand on hers. His face tired, bruised, but smiling. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. She stared at him, her voice rough. Did we win?" He chuckled softly. "You died. Twice. Heart stopped. Lungs collapsed. Doctors had to rebuild half your rib cage." Her eyes widened. He squeezed her hand gently. "But you still refused to let go. They said they'd never seen anything like it." She let out a shaky breath. "What about the soldiers, Orvis?" Mason's face darkened. "Gone. Scattered. When he died, the others lost their chain of control. Most retreated. Some surrendered. A few were taken prisoner. But the war, at least this battle, it's over." She closed her eyes for a second. Tears slipped down her cheek. He wiped it gently. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "You stayed. I always will." Then she noticed something heavy on her chest, resting gently on her hospital gown. She looked down. It was a silver medal, glowing faintly under the lights. "Mason, what is this?" He smiled. "The Earth Council gave it to you," he said, "for bravery, for saving me, for fighting your own kind to protect civilians, for choosing peace." She stared at the medal. "But I'm not even human." He leaned closer, whispering softly, "You're more human than most humans I've met." She laughed, weakly, but real. Then a knock on the door. A tall woman entered, sharp uniform, tablet in hand. "Tharia," she said, "my name is Major Ellis. I've been assigned by the United Planets Security Council. They have questions." Mason stood defensively. "She's not ready." But Tharia nodded. It's all right, I'll answer. Major Ellis approached. You are technically a war asset of the Xerix military, but due to your actions, saving a decorated Earth soldier and resisting your commander, you have been granted temporary asylum. Tharia raised an eyebrow. Temporary? Earth law still requires a tribunal vote. They need to decide if you're a threat, or something more. Tharia leaned back, sighing. A vote to decide my life? Major Ellis nodded. You'll be taken to the Central Tribunal tomorrow. Mason may stand with you if he chooses. Tharia looked at him. He didn't even hesitate. I'll be there. And 1 day later, the tribunal hall was massive, circular, filled with leaders, judges, officers, and whispering reporters. Cameras floated silently overhead. At the center, Tharia, still weak, still healing, but standing. Beside her, Mason Drake, his uniform polished, his hand steady on her back. A judge spoke. State your name. Tharia, she said clearly. Former designation? S-17. Do you consider yourself loyal to the Xerix military? She held her head high. No, not anymore. Do you consider yourself loyal to Earth? She paused, then looked at Mason, and smiled. I'm loyal to him. Gasps spread through the room. The judge frowned. That is not a government. No, she said louder now. But it's the first thing that treated me like I was more than just a weapon. A senator leaned forward. You fought your own kind. Why? She looked around the room, her voice slow and sure. Because they made me hate. They told me humans were monsters. But I met a man who showed me laughter, warmth, safety. Even after I tried to kill him, he carried me. More murmurs in the crowd. I wanted to destroy him, she said. Instead, he rebuilt me. The judge banged the gavel once. Final question. If granted citizenship, what will you do? She turned fully to Mason now. And, without fear, she said, I'll stay by his side in war or peace, and maybe, just maybe, I'll warm his bed like I once promised. The chamber fell silent. Then, one by one, the tribunal lights lit up. Green, green, green. Unanimous approval. Mason grabbed her hand, his smile brighter than anything in the room. She turned to him, barely holding back her tears. So what now? She asked. He grinned. Now, we go home. 2 weeks later, the cabin was small but warm, mountains outside, a river nearby, no alarms, no warships, just wind and trees. Mason sat on the porch fixing part of a solar heater. Tharia stepped out quietly. No armor now. She wore soft earth clothes, loose and warm, and around her neck, the Earth Medal of Honor. She sat beside him and leaned on his shoulder. This is real? She whispered. He looked at her. Real as it gets. She looked at the soft bed through the window. A bed she'd slept in for the past 5 nights. Then turned back to him. Mason? Yeah? You remember what I said the first time we met? He smirked. You said, don't kill me, human, I'll warm your bed. She nodded, blushing just slightly. I meant it. I know. Then she kissed him. Soft, slow, full of everything she had never been allowed to feel. And when the night fell, she crawled into that warm bed, not because she was told to, but because it was hers now. Alongside the only person who ever gave her the right to be something more.